Jayam Vishnupad Padmahansa Parivrajaga Asatulasi Srimad Divine Grace Abhay Charanarvind Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Swami Vidhi Vandar Charges Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayam Vishnupad Padmahansa Parivrajaga Asatulasi Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the sum of devotees. All glories to the sum of devotees. All glories to the sum of devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Padaya Bhale. Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharni Nivishesha Shunyavadi Pastatari Shatarni. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, second canto, chapter 1. The first step in God realization. I believe we're on text number 37. Brahmananam Kshatra Bhujo Varna Nanabida Bija. Did I say that right? Nanabidha Bija. What did I skip? Nanabid. Oh, I'm sorry. That makes sense. You're missing the whole second line. Oh, very good. Vid, Urur, Angri, Shrita, Krishna, Varna, Nanabida Bija, Ganopapano, Dravyatmaka, Karma, Vitana, Yoga, Brahmananam Kshatrabhujo Mahatma. Brahmananam Kshatrabhujo Mahatma. Vid Ururangri Shrita Krishna Varna. Vidururangri Shrita Krishna Varna. Nana Bida Bhija Gunopapano. Nana Bida Bhija Gunopapano. Dravyatmaka Karma Vitana Yoga. Brahmananam Kshatrabhujo Mahatma. Vidururangri Shrita Krishna Varna. Nanabida Bija Gunopapano. Dravyatmaka Karma Vitana Yoga. Brahmananam Kshatrabhujo Mahatma. Virurangri Shrita Krishna Varna. Ladies? Let's try another melody. Ramanananam Kshatrabhujo Mahatma Vidururangri Shrita Krishna Varna Nanabida Vidya Gunopapano Dravyatmaka Karma Vitana Yoga Brahma, the Brahmanas. Ananam, the face. Kshatra, the Kshatriyas. Bhuja, the arms. Mahatma, the. Oh, the Virata Purusha, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, the Virata Purusha. Vit, the Vaishyas. Uru, the thighs. Angrishita, under the protection of his feet. Krishnavarna, the Shudras. Nana, various. Abhida, by names. Abhijagana, the demigods. Upapana, being overtaken. Dravya Atmaka, with feasible goods. Karma, activities. Vitana Yoga, performances of sacrifice. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Virata Purusha's face is the Brahmanas, his arms are the Kshatriyas, his thighs are the Vaishyas, and the Shudras are under the protection of his feet. All the worshipable demigods are also overtaken by him, and it is the duty of everyone to perform sacrifices with feasible goods to appease the Lord. Please repeat. The Virata Purusha's face is the Brahmanas. His arms are the Kshatriyas. His thighs are the Vaishyas. And the Shudras are under the protection of his feet. All the worshipable demigods are also overtaken by him. And it is the duty of everyone to perform sacrifices with feasible goods to appease the Lord. Purport. Monotheism is practically suggested here. Offering sacrifices to many demigods under different names is mentioned in the Vedic literatures. But the suggestion made in this verse is that all those varieties of demigods are included in the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they are only the parts and parcels of the whole of the original whole. Similarly, the divisions of the orders of human society, namely the Brahmanas, the intelligent class, the Kshatriyas, the administrators, the Vaishyas, the mercantile community, and the Shudras, the laborer class, are all included in the body of the Supreme. As such, sacrifice by every one of them in terms of pleasing the Supreme by feasible goods is recommended. Generally, the sacrifice is offered with clarified butter and grains. But with the progress of time, human society has produced varieties of goods by transforming materials supplied by God's material nature. Human society therefore must learn to offer sacrifices not only with clarified butter, but also with other manufactured goods in the propagation of the Lord's glory. And that will bring about perfection in human society. The intelligent class of men or brahmanas may give direction for such sacrifices in consultation with the previous acharyas. The administrators may give all facilities to perform such sacrifices. The Vaishya class or mercantile community who produce such goods may offer them for sacrifice, and the Sudra class may offer their manual labor for the successful termination of such sacrifice. Thus, by the cooperation of all classes of human society, the sacrifice recommended in this age, namely the sacrifice of congregational chanting of the holy name of the Lord, may be executed for the common welfare of all the people of the world. Om Jnana Timidandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Mukam Karo Devachalam Pangam Lankaya Tegirim Yad Kipadam Hambandi Yigirum Dinatarana Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram. So Srila Prabhupada is very nicely describing here the perfect society. There's a lot of upheaval in the world these days for various reasons, whether it be political, social, economic, altruistic even, and people really don't have any direction or answers for that matter. Prabhupada sometimes comments about how the only thing increasing these days are the flags at the United Nations building. Every year there's more flags, which means disunity in reality. It's not unity, but it's disunity. So there's really no solution or remedy given. But here, the Srimad Bhagavatam gives us such a very practical explanation how society should be arranged. Just like the body has its divisions and it works in unison. There's the head or the brahmanas, the arms or the kshatriyas, the belly, the mercantile, and the legs, the shudras. The body works in unison. But the head has to be there, otherwise the body's useless. You can survive in a body without legs, right? Or even arms. And to some extent, people are kept alive, artificially being fed. But without the brain, what is the use? It's all useless. There's no benefit to it. So similarly, without the head, without leadership in society, it's chaotic. So the principle or the element of theism as given by the Brahmanas has to be there. And Srila Prabhupada is very nicely pointing out here that monotheism is practically suggested here. Because everyone has their part to play in the body. All of it is there to serve the whole. Similarly, there are many sacrifices to be offered. I remember years ago, one sannyasi was offering sacrifices, was offering puja to one demigod, and there was some question about it. And Prabhupada's response was that, well, what is he doing with the fruit of that yajna? Well, he's helping to build Mayapur Dham in Vrindavan, specifically the Krishna, Krishna, Balaram Mandir. And Prabhupada said, okay, he's authorized. So there are many sacrifices that one can, Indra Yagya, one can perform Surya Yagya, Durga Yagya. There's many sacrifices that one can perform. And all of these things are given a specific mention for a specific result. Just like during Chaturmasya, right? You're recommended to perform certain kinds of yagyas, certain kinds of penances, sacrifices, in order to achieve a particular type of result. If you don't take salt, you'll get this benefit. If you eat like this, you'll get such and such benefit. If you stay away from this kind of food during that time period, you get such and such benefit. If you don't shave or maintain any kind of importance to maintaining the body for a certain period of time, you get a certain type of benefit. So all of these things are certainly mentioned in the Vedic literatures. But here Srila Prabhupada points out that in all of that is included, or needs to be, for its proper execution, needs to be the element of satisfying the personality of Godhead. Again, just like during the Indra Yagya, the residents of Vrindavan had their idea how and why they should perform this yagya, and the Lord explained this karma mimamsa idea. Ultimately, it was understood that they were offering sacrifice to the Supreme Lord, or the end of it all was to be dependent on the personality of Godhead. So, similarly, the purpose or the most benefit that one can get out of this human form of life is to be engaged in worshiping the personality of Godhead, who is the source of all of the demigods and sages, right? Aham Adir Devanam Maharshana what is that? Sarvasha. The Lord is the source of the demigods and the sages. And not only is he the source, but he's maintaining all of them. Not only is everything being produced by the Lord, but he's also maintaining all of them. Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam Eko Bahunam Yoviridati Kaman. There are many eternals. We're all eternal. There are many, all living beings have an eternality element. And they're all conscious. There's some chaita. There's some consciousness there. But amongst all those eternals and amongst all those conscious living beings is one supreme, which is offering the supplying all of the necessities of all others. It's not that they're independent or things are happening of their own accord. No, actually, all of it is being maintained. Therefore, it should be offered to him. What is it? Ekala Ishvara Krishna Arsabha Bhritta. That Krishna is the supreme, and he's also the supreme enjoyer. Therefore, knowing that, society should be arranged in that fashion. The perfect function of society should be in that way. Just like, again, in the society, in the body, certain things have to be done in order for the brain to function properly, and then the body uh, is useful. Otherwise, it's chaos, and it becomes useless, and eventually passes away. So uh, here, Srila Prabhupada is describing very nicely how society should be such that sacrifices have to be there by everyone. Everyone has a certain responsibility. The Brahmanas have a certain responsibility, the Kshatriyas have a certain responsibility, the Vaishyas, and also the Shudras. And when everybody's working in unison, then the sacrifice is beneficial. Uh, and as Prabhupada points out here, they should be done with feasible goods. It's a very interesting point that Sri Prabhupada makes here, that uh, certain elements have to be there in the proper execution of sacrifice. Generally, the sacrifice is offered with clarified butter and grains. But with the progress of time, human society has produced varieties of goods by transforming materials supplied by God's material nature. Very interesting point, that due to the development of society, so many things have been produced. Not just butter and grains can be offered, in other words, for the Lord's service. But so many things can be offered. And we see that practically in our Krishna conscious line, that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur engaged the printing press. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta engaged in expanding the preaching and using various modern amenities. Srila Prabhupada has taken that further by spreading Krishna consciousness throughout the world in the form of his books and other media. So in this way, although society is developing and producing all sorts of goods, all of those, their proper use is when it's used in the service of the Lord. Just like sometimes sometimes people may criticize or comment that I thought you people were renunciates. How is it that you have a watch, or you're going around in a car, or you're living in a palatial building? Uh, uh, but this is actually also a sacrifice, because all of these facilities, all of these goods, as Prabhupada points out here, very interestingly, human society has produced varieties of goods. So those goods, they can also be used in Krishna's service, and it becomes part of the sacrifice. Which makes it useful, which makes those goods useful and valuable. So real renunciation means, what is it? Nirbande Krishna Sambande Yukta Varagyami Uchate. It means to accept whatever is beneficial for propagating Krishna consciousness. And if it means we accept a building, or if we have to live in a tent, it's okay. If we have a very wonderful foodstuffs, or if we're just eating havishana in the morning, or if we're having certain transport, or if we're having to walk or take a bicycle or whatever, public transport. There's so many facilities. So, but the use of all of those is recommended when it's being offered in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But to accept those things just because we want to make our lives comfortable is not the proper understanding. It's not renunciation, but it's materialistic attachment. It's delusional. No, the proper renunciation means to accept everything which is favorable and reject those things which may be obstacles to our development. So if it means I have to take on a particular service or a particular responsibility or a particular ashram for that matter, in the service of Krishna, the devotee should be prepared to do that. If it means that I need to abstain from such and such thing for my progress in Krishna consciousness, then I am willing to do that. Srila Prabhupada has given us a very simple formula. There's regulative principles, there's rising, there's chanting, there's reading, there's association, there's offering of foods. There's so many. It's a wonderful process. All of these things can be used in Krishna's service for the purpose of advancing Krishna consciousness and making that sacrifice complete. So, the intelligent class of men, as Prabhupada points out here, may give direction for such sacrifice in consultation with the previous acharjas. So it's not that it's something that's being done whimsically, but it's being done according to the authorized process. We don't, and this is called the descending process of Krishna consciousness, receiving knowledge from the higher authorities. And that all of that is very nicely wrapped up in Srila Prabhupada's last statement, where he says that by the cooperation of these classes of human beings, the sacrifice recommended in this age, namely the sacrifice of congregational chanting of the holy name of the Lord, may be executed for the common welfare of all the people of the world. When that cooperation is there, then the sacrifice which is recommended for this age can be executed very nicely. Kriteya Dhayato Vishnu. The Bhagavatam describes very nicely that in this age, Kaloda Dari Kirtanat, the recommended process. In previous ages, we could engage in meditation, years of meditation, or we could engage in years of sacrificing, making all sorts of austerities and penances. Or in previous ages, we could engage in costly deity worship. But in this day and age, the sacrifice, the best use of all of these elements of society and all these different classes of society is to be engaged in the chanting of the holy names. That is the best and most effective means and the best example of cooperation. It's the best example. So many, again, society is divided in so many different ways these days, and there's no example. Instead of cooperation, it's a disunited world, a disunited society, disunited communities, even disunited families. So the process, therefore, this chanting of the holy names of the Lord is such a beautiful means that all of the Vedic literatures are recommended. Nama Sankirtanam. What is it? Nama Sankirtanam Yasya Sarva Papa Pranashanam. The last verse of the Bhagavatam describes how one should offer obeisance to the personality of Godhead, whose congregational chanting of his holy names destroys all sinful reactions. People are engaged in so many activities in the world, and it's simply degrading them. So the Bhagavatam describes Nama Sankirtanam Yasya Sarva Papa Pranashanam. If we want to become freed from all of these difficulties, all of these reactions, then simply chant the holy name of the Lord. Pranamo dukkha samanam tam namami harim param. And the offering of obeisances unto whom relieves one of all material suffering. Not only are these sinful reactions cleansed, but also the material suffering is absolved. So it's a perfect process, and this, as we were mentioning earlier, is being given and has come down through uh, uh, great personalities, as Prabhupada points out here in the purport. It's it's um, it's done in consultation with previous acharyas. And we were mentioning on Sunday that the previous acharyas, such great personalities as Madhvacharya and today Ramanujacharya. So if there are no questions, I wanted to say a couple of things about and read a couple of things about Sri Ramanujacharya because he's a very important personality in our disciplic line. Srila Prabhupada describes that between Ramanuja and Madhvacharya, the uh, Mayavad and monistic philosophies that were propagated in India in the early years in the 900s. From that time on, from the time of Sri Shankara, or this Mayavad idea, these great personalities such as Madhvacharya, Ramanujacharya, their commentaries, Srila Prabhupada points out, have broken the teeth of these monistic and Mayavad teachings. And specifically, Srila Prabhupada comments about Ramanujacharya as being very instrumental in his Vashishtadvaita philosophy teachings, and how effective they were in addressing the Mayavadi teachings. And I wanted to again read a couple of things about his person. He was from the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya. So Madhvacharya being, and us being from the Brahma Sampradaya. But still, Ramanuja and Madhvacharya, the combination of their preaching work was so effective in addressing the Buddhist and Mayavadic teachings that were going on during the time, that they're very instrumental in the development of, Srila Prabhupada explains, how it was a very smooth transition to the Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's very, very fascinating. Ramanuja, first of all, was a very learned Vaishnav, even at an early age. Just like Madhvacharya, Madhvacharya at the age of 8 or 9, in that neighborhood, 11 years old, at 11 he took sannyas. But at the age of 8 or 9, they were already very profound preachers and teachers. And as Madhvacharya, Ramanuja also was very, very strong and powerful in his early, even in his early school days. immediately there was a conflict with his teachers because his teachers at that time were teaching the Shankara, Adi Shankara's Mayavad philosophy. There was an immediate conflict with Ramanuja and his teacher, whose name was Yadava Prakash. One day when the other students had gone home to take lunch, Yadava Prakash, who was Ramanuja's teacher, asked Ramanuja to massage his body with oil. At that time, one of the other students returned to the school to discuss with his teacher a passage from the Chandogya Upanishad they had been studying that morning, wherein it is stated, there's a verse, Kapsya Sam Pundariksham Eva Akshini. Following the Sankaracharya's interpretation, Yadava Prakash began to explain that Kapi Asham referred to the rear end of a monkey, and that the whole passage meant that the Supreme Lord had eyes like lotuses, as red as a monkey's rear end. This is their understanding. On hearing this horrible explanation of the appearance of his beloved Lord, Ramanuja, who was still massaging his guru, was filled with such intense grief that hot tears immediately began to pour from his eyes. When Yadava Prakash felt the touch of these tears, he looked up in surprise. Seeing Ramanuja's distress, he asked what was causing him such pain. To this inquiry, Ramanuja replied, "O Master, it causes me such suffering to hear this terrible explanation from a great soul like yourself. How sinful it is to compare the beautiful lotus eyes of the Lord to the posterior of a monkey. I never expected to hear such a thing from my teacher." Yadava Prakash was angered by this challenge from one of his own students, and he replied sharply, "I also am very aggrieved. Impudent words from my inferior are never praiseworthy." So they go on and have an exchange. He goes back and forth. "By your mercy, everything is possible," replied Ramanuja, because the teacher asked, "Well, okay, if you know better, then explain it to me." So Ramanuja went on to explain that instead of understanding the posterior of a monkey from the word kapsyasam, he said another meaning is possible. Kapi can be taken as kam jalam bibati, that which drinks up the water, or in other words, the sun. The word asam also means to blossom. So the whole word kapi asam, can be understood as that which blossoms under the sun, or in other words, the lotus flower. So he, throughout his whole preaching work, he was so knowledgeable, he was so clear. And scholars, throughout his whole life, he met various so-called scholars, and he would destroy their arguments in such a beautiful way. Yadava Prakash was very surprised to hear such a clever explanation from one of his own students. A few days later, when Yadava Prakash was instructing his students from the Taittiriya Upanishad, he made the statement that the Supreme Brahman is truth, knowledge, and infinity. On hearing this impersonal idea of God, Ramanuja could not contain himself. He immediately objected to his teacher's explanation, saying, "No, this verse means that the Supreme possesses truth, knowledge, and infinity. But still he has his own existence beyond these attributes." Angered by this unexpected interruption, Yadava Prakash replied, "You presumptuous child, if you won't accept my explanations, then why do you come here? Why not go home and start a school of your own?" So that's what he did. He left school and started off on his own. Yadava Prakash predicted, as he grows older, this boy will strongly establish the dualistic philosophy of devotion. This must not be allowed to happen. I will do whatever is necessary to protect the doctrine of monism, even if it means that I have to kill him. And that's what he tried to do. in cahoots with his disciples, they made some plan that they would go on pilgrimage. Let's invite Ramanuja to come with us, and we'll, as we're walking in the woods, we'll assassinate him. We'll kill him. And then when we get back to the village, this is outside of Madras, or in Madras area, and which is Chennai now. And um, uh, if the citizens ask, or if his parents ask, well, he got separated from us, he got lost, and we don't know what happened to him. So as they were scheming like this, one of um, his cousin, Govinda, overheard what this conversation, and he passed this on to Ramanuja just in time, so that Ramanuja, instead of going on the pilgrimage, he immediately went, where he went south, was it? I think he went south. And to Kanchipuram. And there he was walking and passing through the woods. He was only an 18-year-old boy. It was dark. There was no one there. There's so many dangers. But he was met by a hunter and his wife, right? He was met by a hunter and his wife, who eventually, to make a long story short, they guided him all the way to his destination. But he was at the same time very fascinated, although he was a little apprehensive, he was fascinated by the attractiveness of this tall, dark-skinned person with his wife, which we understand turned out later to be, was it Lakshmi Narayan? He ended up, after spending some time in Kanchipuram, ended up going back home and continued his schooling. And again, went back to the school that he had started with, and his teacher explained to his parents what had happened, but the information wasn't shared with anyone else, so no one knew except himself and his Govinda and his parents. When he came back, his teacher, Yadava Prakash, faked or fainted his surprise. Oh, you're back. We're so happy to see you. And he didn't react to this. He just let it go and continued with his schooling. And became very famous and very powerful and prominent in society. There's a very interesting exchange that he has with a princess who was the daughter of the ruling king, and she was being possessed by some ghosts. Yadava Prakash was also understood to know some kind of mantras that he could exorcise ghosts, but failing to do that, they asked Ramanuja to come and speak to her, do something for her. And what is it that he did? He put his foot on her head. And did he ask her to chant something? No, just by putting, there was a discussion actually with the ghost and Ramanuja, that I'll leave this girl if you put your lotus foot on her head. So he did that, and the ghost went away. As a result, Yatiraj or Ramanuja um, became very renowned. This again, throughout his life, he did so many wonderful um, um, exchanges, you could say, with different personalities. He made three vows. This is also very interesting. And this was at the death ceremony of Jamunacharya, who was known as Alabandar at the time. Jamunacharya was prior to um, Ramanuja, but uh, um, they knew each other. They had met before, and Alabandar benedicted Ramanuja, gave him a blessing that he would be successful in his work. So at the time of Jamunacharya's passing, they noticed that his body and his right hand, his three fingers were clenched, and it was quite unusual. Why is this? So, and everyone was asking, was he normally like this? No, no, this is the first time we've seen anything like this. So when Ramanuja came and saw that, he made three vows because he understood the meaning behind this. I see that three fingers of Alabandar's right hand are folded and clenched. Were they like that during his lifetime? No. So he makes this declaration. 1. Remaining fixed in devotion to Lord Vishnu. And again, these were vows that he understood that Jamunacharya wanted him to fulfill in his preaching work. I shall free the people from illusion by spreading the glories of the Lord throughout the land. As these words were spoken, one of the fingers relaxed and became straight. Ramanuja spoke again. To establish that there is no truth beyond Lord Vishnu, I shall write the Sri Bhasya commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. At this, the second of Jamunacharya's fingers became straight. Ramanuja again declared, in order to show respect to the sage Parasara, who has so wonderfully described the glories of the Lord in the Vishnu Purana, I shall name one learned Vaishnava after him. With this final statement, the last of Alabandar's fingers relaxed and became straight. And this is significant because these three vows he fulfilled throughout his life. He initiated a disciple, Parasara, who carried on his preaching, which was very, very significant. And he wrote the Sri Bhasya, which was meant to defeat the Mayavad interpretation of Vedanta Sutra. And he spent his whole life in spreading the message of devotion to Lord Vishnu through his Vashishta Dvaita philosophy. And that, of course, is the qualified dualism. And this he spent throughout his whole life fulfilling. There's just a couple other little pastimes I can read if you want to hear. That famous pastime where he's instructed by his guru, Gostipurna, to at his sannyas initiation, he gives him one mantra, and he tells his disciple, Ramanuja, keep this a secret. This mantra is so powerful, it will offer liberation to anyone who hears it. So what did Ramanujacharya do? He went out, as soon as he got this initiation, he went out to the top of the building and began to broadcast it. And all the people were listening, they were raising their hands, they were all appreciating. And when Gostipurna heard this, he became very angry. How is it that you've disobeyed my instruction? I told you, don't don't say this out loud. This is a great offense. And Ramanuja's answer was that understanding the significance of this important mantra, I was willing to even transgress the orders of the Guru, which means what? Going to hell. I'm prepared to do that if it offers that benediction to the citizens. And understanding this, Gostipurna instead accepted or could understand the elevated consciousness of this great soul Ramanuja and accepted him as his teacher instead. There's also one, so again, throughout his life he goes and performs so many wonderful activities, becomes very famous in Sri Rangam, preaching the glories of Lord Ranganath. But at some point he falls in disfavor of the Chola king who was there. And this king was he was a Shaivite, and he didn't like Ramanuja's preaching the glories of Krishna, Lord Narayan. So he called for he summoned he arrested his servants, or he sent he sent his soldiers to go and arrest. Yeah, but Quraysh and his other godbrother heard about what the king was going to do, so they traded dress, and they arrested Quraysh and his godbrother, and Ramanuja was able to escape. So when they brought Quraysh in the disguise of Ramanuja, and they answered him, the king became very irritated by his questioning or his answers, because again he wanted to hear that Lord Shiva was supreme. Instead, Quraysh replied that, and with a play of words, he instead was pointing out how Lord Narayan is supreme. So the king got very angry at this and had his eyes plucked out, Quraysh's eyes, and sent him off. Take these two back to wherever they are from, and he was the king of Kalinga or something like that. And in the meantime, Ramanuja had returned to Sri Rangam, and after some time, again continued his preaching, but then after some time, hearing how Quraysh had sacrificed his vision, his eyes for the protection of Ramanuja, he told him that he should go to the deity and pray for his eyesight, which he did, and lo and behold, his eyesight was returned. Finally, I wanted to read something about his passing and his final instructions, which are very, really quite profound. Final instructions. Let's see, he began to speak to his disciples and tell them that he gave them a number of instructions, and after those instructions, he then told him that he was going to be leaving. And on hearing their cries, because their disciples were crying all of a sudden, Ramanuja, he came out of his trance and said to his disciples, "My dear children, why do you cry out in lamentation like uneducated men? Do you think this body can endure forever? Am I not fixed in your hearts for all time? Therefore give up this useless waiting and understand the will of the Lord." To this the disciples all replied, "O Master, as always your instructions are perfect. Nonetheless, it is impossible for us to bear the pain of separation." So they went on to express their anxiety. So he said, "Okay, so I'll stay with them for 3 more days." He ordered that all of his disciples should come there, and when they assembled there, he delivered his final instructions. "Worship all Vaishnavas as you worship your Guru. Have faith in the previous acharjas and never be controlled by the senses. Never be satisfied simply by worldly knowledge. Study the scriptures which describe the glories of the Supreme Lord. Transcendental knowledge can overcome the pushings of the mind and senses. Be indifferent to the promptings of the mind. Always relish the chanting of the holy name and qualities of the Lord. The best way to serve the Lord is rendering service to his devotees. Never follow the ways of a Vaishnav for material gain. Always endeavor for purity." When Yatiraj had finished speaking, the disciples questioned him further, asking how they should conduct themselves while in this world. Again, Ramanujacharya instructed them, "One who has surrendered to Lord Narayan should not be concerned about his future, depending always on the Lord's mercy. All duties should be performed as acts of devotion to the Lord and never for material gain." And he goes on and on describing various instructions. When Ramanuja had finished speaking, his disciples, some of them leading disciples, came forward and made this presentation to him. "Your body, which is ever engaged in the service of the Lord, can never be material. Our bodies are certainly temporary, but yours exists only on the platform of spiritual life. Therefore, our request is that we never be deprived of the sight of your transcendental form." Taking pity upon them, Ramanuja accepted his disciples' request and ordered that expert sculptors be brought there to carve the stone deity in his likeness. And then, shortly after that, he gave up his body and returned to the abode of Lord Vishnu. Sri Ramanujacharya ki jai.